Okay, so it should be recording. So today I want to talk about consent, because I've seen a lot of posts in Antinatalism Reddit that people say that a consent argument doesn't work, and they give a couple of objections to it. Now, I'm in favor of consent arguments, so I'm going to give a defense of it here. Now, I believe the root of all of these different objections is that we have a very kind of limited view about consent. So when we talk about consent, it seems that everyone has in their mind this kind of verbal consent to something before it happens, and that's it. But for me, it has a more broad scope. For me, consent means to give permission to be in the state that you are in. So in case of antinatalism, when a child is born, they are in a state that they have not given permission to. And that's it. Like, it doesn't matter whether they existed or not before they were born. The point is, right now, you're alive, you're in life. That's a project, that's a big thing. You have to invest energy in living. It's not an easy thing to do. Have you given permission to be in this condition? No. Your being here is a direct consequence of something that your parents did. And your being here is without your permission. That's the end of story from me regarding that question. You're here without your consent. Life is a big project. You're in this project without your consent. Now, the second objection was that there are a lot of things going on that we don't give any consent to. So, for example, you go outside and there are sounds. People come into your field of view. The sun is shining. And all of this is happening without your consent. But is it? Is it happening without our consent? Because I believe that we do give consent to all of this. When we decide to do something, when we give permission for something to happen, we are also giving permission to everything that is implied by that to happen. So there is a nature to going out. There is a natural law that dictates that when you go out, there's going to be sound, there's going to be people walking, there's going to be sun shining on your face. So when you give consent to going out, and that's not just a verbal consent, that's just you deciding to go out, that's enough. You're giving permission to going out and everything that follows from it naturally. Now, of course, there are other things that are not included in the nature of going out. For example, being robbed on the street. That's not part of going out. It's not just a natural thing. Hey, yeah, we go out. That's just the way it is. No, it's not. So, of course, that requires a consent, which, otherwise we wouldn't call it robbing, if it were consented. So, again, when we do something, when we go outside and there are certain things that follows from it, when you accept to do something, you're also accepting and giving permission to everything that is implied by the natural law. So I guess that also doesn't work. Of course, there are some gray area also here. And that's why the consent is still important. Because if consent didn't matter, then a lot of these conversations would be moot. For example, you're walking outside and you just want to be on your own. You want to be, just have a quiet moment on your own. And someone comes and just starts talking to you. Is that okay? Now that's a gray area because on the one hand, you have given permission for that person to come and talk to you because, that's just part of the nature of going out. People are there. Sometimes they come and ask questions. But on the other hand, you might make a case here that, hey, I wanted to be alone in quiet, but now you're kind of disturbing me. You should have asked before, for example, asking questions or before talking to me. You should ask hey, can I ask you a question? Sorry, can I ask you a question? So there are some gray areas that we can talk about it, but that only makes sense if consent is important. And that's where the natural part comes in. What is exactly the essential nature of going out, so we can understand what follows by the natural law from that event that's happening. So that's one thing. The other objection was, what about all those first years of your life that you're not completely aware, you're just a newborn baby, and there are a lot of things that are going to happen to you. For example, you're going to be educated, you're going to be fed, and it seems that you also don't give consent to any of them, which again, I believe is false. We do give consent to all of them. For example, when a baby cries for food, to me, that's permission to give them food. And when you provide the food, they start eating the food. To me, that just shows me that the condition that they are in, that is eating that food, is by their permission. We're not force feeding them. And for other needs too. What about education? Again, the same principle. Imagine someone is at school, just a little kid. Are they there by their own permission? If not, then I believe we should declare that as a bad thing, as an immoral thing. Now, someone might say, okay, but there's no other way. I would say, okay, let's just first say that, let's just make that clear, that that's a wrong thing to do. If anyone in any age is at a condition that they have not given permission to, something's wrong is going on here. Now, there are two possibilities. One, you say, okay, there is no other way. It's absolutely impossible for someone to be educated without being forced to be educated. For me, that still doesn't change the fact that it's wrong to do that. But if you say that it's impossible for anything else to happen, then that just means that just adds to the gravity of the situation. That just adds to the evil of procreation. Because if it's impossible for this wrong thing to not happen, if you are born, then just basically means that second evil is being implied by this first evil of creation. That just adds to the evil of procreation, because you're doing something and there are other horrible things implied by it. They have to be forced to go to the school, they have to be forced to go to work, they will have to be forced to go through death and face death and go through diseases and everything else. That just adds to the evil if there's no way out of it. But that doesn't mean that they are okay and they're good and they're fine, that they're morally permissible to force a child to go to school. No, I believe we have to first declare it as an immoral, as a wrong thing to do. That's first. If it's impossible, so be it. It's impossible. What can you do? But that doesn't mean that's right. But I don't think it's impossible. That's a very strong statement. And if there are some other possible routes, declaring this as immoral will have a good result, because then it will push us to go into these other alternatives. So, for instance, we know that children, they cry for their needs. They're also interested. They ask a lot of questions. I guess we can make education interesting enough for them. Imagine they ask about different things. Okay, do you want to learn about that? Okay, let me teach you. Do you want to read? Are you interested in reading? Let me teach you. Are you interested in doing those numbers? I can teach you. Now, if you're lazy enough to say, okay, that's just too much work, that homeschooling like that's just too much work, I'm just going to send them off to school, just get educated like everyone else. Then, again, that doesn't justify. Still a wrongdoing. But if we want to be responsible, if you believe that we have done something wrong already, we have brought them into this life without their permission, at least let's try to maybe behave a little bit better here. Let's put some effort here and try to make everything that's happening to them with their permission. And I think it's possible. It really doesn't matter for me if it's possible or not, because in the end, it's wrong. And if it's impossible, that just shows how more evil the act of procreation is. But I believe it's possible. Of course, our laziness doesn't justify us just to do the easy way out, the wrong thing. But I believe it's possible to do the right thing here as well. So in general, yeah, I guess I don't say anything wrong with the consent, and these objections doesn't work. Because it just makes sense. I mean, if someone is in a condition, I cannot really see any reason why they should be in that place without their permission. So yeah, I believe the consent argument works, and these objections, at least the ones that I've seen, does not work. Cheers.